There are a couple of scenarios that are in the catalog of accommodations for students with Tourette syndrome, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. One of these samples is titled, "I Have a Chicken in My Pants." A student with Tourette syndrome in 7th grade suddenly developed a vocal tic that involves shouting out 3 or 4 times a class period, "I have a chicken in my pants." Teachers were mystified as to what to do. They thought that they should just tell Chris to leave the room before he said it. Unfortunately, students with TS don't know when a tic is going to happen. So one of the teachers who has TS themselves approached the classroom teacher and suggested that they do 2 things. That teacher asked them to keep track in one class period during the day of the number of interruptions that occurred during that class. They were to count all interruptions: sneezing, coughing, nose blowing, pencil sharpening, children dropping things, the school intercom, a plane flying overhead, etc. Then that teacher asked the teacher to compare the number with the student with TS syndrome 3 or 4 times, saying, "I have a chicken in my pants." The chicken in my pants paled in comparison to all the other daily interruptions that teachers are accustomed to. Everyone was all right with that, and the peer in service took place. Another scenario, entitled "You Don't Look Like You're Paying Attention," describes a student named Sue who would walk around the room softly slapping the sides of her legs. Her teacher had learned that if Sue sat quietly at her desk, she was unable to focus, and by walking, she could actually pay attention. So one day, a teacher walked in to observe, and Sue was working on a computer while the classroom teacher was reading a story on which the entire class would be tested immediately afterwards. That teacher asked the aide if Sue was taking notes and was told that she was writing a mystery. When that teacher asked why Sue wasn't listening to the story, that teacher was told to stay a few minutes and watch. When the teacher was done, Sue's aide scribed for her as she took the test. Sue scored 100%. The classroom teacher later assured the other teacher that if she had insisted that Sue sit with her hands folded and her feet on the floor, that she would have most likely failed the test. This is not unusual for students with ADD and TS if they are able to pay attention while fidgeting instead of sitting. Research is beginning to suggest that this movement stimulates the brain, allowing the person to be able to pay attention. So students with Tourette syndrome, being able to move around helps them focus better because they might have OCD or ADHD. Another scenario of OCD, which a lot of Tourette syndrome students can have, describes a middle school student named Teresa. She began to exhibit agitation for no apparent reason, which would frequently escalate into a confrontation with the other student or sometimes even with the teacher. After a while, Teresa developed a trusted relationship with the counselor and confided that she often felt trapped. She imagined the door was locked and she would not be able to get out of the room when it was time to go home. So, whenever possible, the door was left open. If this was not possible, Teresa would sit close to the door with permission to get a drink of water whenever she felt trapped. The trap feeling began. After using this technique for a few days, Teresa rarely left the room. Since she had permission to leave, she no longer felt trapped. This prevented her from becoming anxious, which reduced her difficult behaviors. Another scenario is of Anna, who is a 7th grade student with Tourette syndrome, OCD, and some learning disabilities. Anna suddenly developed an obsession with writing every letter of every word that she wrote perfectly on the line of the paper she was using. Night after night, she would be up